Yo, what's up guys? This is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty. Welcome back to the channel. Many thanks to all of you who have supported me on Patreon. If you want access to exclusive and complete versions of the stories, join me on Patreon. I already have dozens of stories available there. You can even send fanfic requests. The link is in the description. Enjoy the video. Peace. Hokage. Shocked Konoha with Black Coffin from the start. 1 BC. Chapter 1 This is Kido. 1313th. Chapter 1 This is Kido. Next, he looked down at the blood-stained blade that pierced his chest in disbelief. He said in disbelief, "Why Master Aizen? Kill Yhwach and solve the Soul King and your mission is over. You are no longer needed for the next thing." At the last moment of his life he couldn't help but sigh that he was careless after all. He was only thinking about dealing with Yhwach and he relaxed his vigilance against Aizen and finally lost his life. Forget it, it's better this way. He feels a little tired after 1,000 years of fighting. It's not bad to sleep forever. He can accept death due to lack of strength, but he can't swallow this breath of death from a sneak attack. But as consciousness gradually dissipates, all regrets will return to nothingness. At percent speaking of which, don't look at Iruka like that, in fact he hates you too much. The voice of a strange man appeared in his ears, awakening his consciousness that was about to fall into silence. It's so noisy, how can people die and not be quiet? But the man did not stop talking but continued to speak, and his voice became louder and louder in his ears. You are about to die but you still close your eyes. Don't you want to face reality? A monster like you is not needed by the villagers at all. He kept chattering, saying things that people couldn't understand. As he thought about it, he subconsciously touched his waist where the zanpakuto should be worn. But he touched nothing, and the texture of the clothes was different from what he remembered. Just when he was still confused, the voice of the strange man sounded again. The scroll that I asked you to steal is actually the tool that the village is going to use to seal you. So die. Damn, you have been saying some incomprehensible words since just now. Is hell full of idiots like you? He cursed and opened his eyes. With a puff, he was very familiar with this sound. This was the sound of a sharp blade piercing through the muscle. The man who appeared in front of him was a man with a scar on his nose and a metal forehead protector with a strange pattern on his forehead. The strange clothes he was wearing were obviously not the Shinigami's death suit, nor were they the white clothes of the Arankars. Warm blood dripped from the man's face onto his cheek. What's going on? Where is this? Who are you? What's wrong with my voice? He was now full of questions and couldn't figure out the current situation. Wasn't he dead? It stands to reason that if you die in the spirit state in the Shinigami world, besides complete extinction, you will only go to hell. But he clearly remembered the clothes of people in hell, and they would definitely not wear clothes like this. And why is my voice so strange? Why does it sound like a child? Naruto, I think you are actually very sad and in pain, right? I saw the man speaking to him affectionately with tears in his eyes. This is all my fault. I'm sorry for you, Naruto. It's all because I didn't do a good enough job that I gave you so many painful memories. The man's voice gradually choked up. Naruto was furious and looked at the strange man in front of him with a ghostly expression. He called me Naruto. Which Naruto could it be? The one Uzumaki Naruto, the protagonist in the Hokage ninja known as the three major migrant comics together with Shinigami. Is this the hallucination of a dying revolving door, or am I traveling through time again? Although the 1,000 years of Shinigami life has made him almost forget the memories of the Blue Star, he can still vaguely remember the memory of the Hokage, but it is limited to the information that the protagonist is Uzumaki Naruto and the second male lead is Uchiha Sasuke. The details of the plot have long been forgotten. Naruto slowly stood up from Iruka's protection while the man not far away looked at him, watching Naruto's every move with interest as if everything was under his control. He said jokingly, "What's wrong? Have you figured it out and are ready to give up? Don't you want to continue running away? Your dearest teacher Iruka, does it not matter if you die because of this monster like you?" Iruka looked at Naruto in front of him and hurriedly urged, "Run quickly, Naruto. Mizuki's real purpose is the scroll you stole. Don't let him succeed." Naruto frowned, scratched his head a little irritably, moved his body under the gaze of the two people and said, "Okay, don't argue anymore. The two of them are like talking about cross-talk. I can't think anymore because of the noise. Shut up and be quiet for a while." Listening to Naruto's words, Iruka froze and his mind was a little stuck. Mizuki on the side was completely irritated by Naruto with veins appearing on his forehead and sneered. What's wrong? Your brain has finally been affected by the demon fox and you are unconscious. But if you are looking for death like this, then let me satisfy you. Damn you, you little brat. Mizuki quickly rushed to the two of them and pulled out the giant shuriken that was originally inserted into Iruka's back. Iruka grinned and wailed in pain. Without any hesitation, Mizuki swung his shuriken, aimed at Naruto's neck and slashed at it. Naruto just raised his right hand indifferently and a tiny shield made of ryutsu appeared at his wrist which easily blocked Mizuki's slash, and the strong reverberation even made Mizuki's hand Li Jian almost let go. Mizuki's eyes widened, feeling the strong feedback. He must have hit something extremely hard, but there was nothing in front of him. Mizuki couldn't understand what Naruto had done to block his fatal blow just by raising his hand. Iruka, who was on the side, also witnessed what just happened. His angle was just right and he could see that Mizuki's shuriken was suddenly bounced away without touching Naruto. Because he was so shocked, Iruka even forgot to let Naruto escape and muttered to himself, "What on earth is this?" Mizuki yelled angrily. "What kind of ninjutsu did you use, you guy? You didn't even move the seal and you were able to block my attack. It's so noisy. What kind of ninjutsu? I don't know that kind of thing. I just used Kido," Naruto explained impatiently. "Kido?" Mizuki's eyes suddenly lit up, greed appearing in his eyes. "I know this must be the ninjutsu recorded on the scroll." Kido. Iruka has never heard of the ninjutsu called Kido. As Uzumaki Naruto's class teacher, he is very familiar with Naruto. Even he doesn't know that Naruto can do such a thing. It's actually not accurate to say that. To be precise, what I just released is a branch of Kido, a type of Bakudo. He looked at the confused expressions of the two people and continued to explain to them. Bakudo. Just like this, Bakudo's 30-mouth sudden 3 flashes. Naruto simply snapped his fingers and 3 huge beams like beaks were arranged in a triangle. They shot out instantly and knocked Mizuki away. His hands and waist were firmly fixed on the big tree behind him. Chapter 2 Hado no 90 Black Coffin Hokage is shocked. 313. Chapter 2 Hado no 90 Black Coffin Hokage is shocked. Damn it, what kind of ninjutsu are you using? Mizuki's body was nailed to the big tree and his body was completely unable to move. At this time an inexplicable fear arose in his heart. Iruka stood up despite the serious injury on his back. He was extremely shocked by the sight in front of him. He opened his mouth and stared blankly at Mizuki not far away. Although he didn't feel chakra, he could tell with his eyes that this move was not simple, but the most important thing was that he could no longer understand the current situation. Iruka barely recovered from the shock and asked, "Naruto, what is the situation now?" At this time the memories that originally belonged to Uzumaki Naruto were gradually integrated into his mind, and together with a little of his original memories he had a better understanding of the world. Although his understanding of the world is limited, he can still clearly distinguish between good and bad. Naruto walked to Iruka's side and comforted him. "Iruka-sensei is so badly injured, don't force it. Since Mizuki-sensei wants to kill me, it's up to me, the student, to teach him a lesson." Listening to Naruto's tone, Iruka felt a little strange, which was obviously different from the Naruto he was familiar with. Iruka said with some uncertainty, "Naruto, you." But Naruto did not continue to pay attention to Iruka. Feeling the remaining ryutsu flowing in this body, he slowly walked to Mizuki. Naruto looked at Mizuki indifferently and said calmly, "Teacher Mizuki, if you just covet the powerful power, in fact you don't have to spend so much time at all. Let me steal the scroll for you and I can teach you something more powerful." Quote. At this point, no matter how slow Mizuki was, he realized that there was something wrong with Naruto in front of him. He struggled in horror, trying to break free from the restraints of his mouth. "Damn it, you're not Naruto. Who are you? Naruto can't have such a powerful power. Are you the fox demon?" Naruto just raised his right hand and began to chant. There is a faint turbid coat of arms, an unruly and arrogant talent, a surge of negation and paralysis for a moment, hindering eternal sleep. Black ryutsu began to gather in his hands. The crawling iron princess, the clay doll that keeps mutilating itself, combines, rebounds and extends to the ground. Know your own powerlessness. Hado's 90 Black Coffin. As Naruto Black Coffin's chant completely ended, a huge black cube formed by the gathering of ryutsu rose from the ground. The extremely powerful flow of gravity caused slight distortion in the surrounding space. Although Iruka couldn't directly feel Ryutsu, the pressure generated by Black Coffin's terrifying power still made him tremble and fall to his knees. Iruka was lying on the ground staring blankly at the collapsed ground in front of Naruto. The cracks on the ground were still spreading and the surrounding trees fell in pieces. The frightened birds and beasts also rushed to escape from the area. There was no longer Mizuki in front of Naruto, and the big tree behind him and the land connected to the big tree completely disappeared into this world as if it had never existed in this world. Naruto stretched and murmured to himself, "This body's Ryutsu aptitude is really weak." After more than 10 years of accumulation, it only erased tens of meters of space. Iruka limped to Naruto's side, looked at the huge pit in front of him and said tremblingly, "Mizuki." "Naruto, what on earth did you use? What's the matter with that technique?" Naruto handed the sealed book behind him into Iruka's hands and said, "Mizuki-sensei should go to another world." "So Mizuki is dead," Iruka muttered. "I didn't mean to kill Mizuki-sensei, but when I taught him Kido his own body was too fragile and couldn't bear it and turned into powder," Naruto said, spreading his hands innocently. Naruto then added and asked, "Does Mr. Iruka care so much about Mr. Mizuki's death, or would it be better for Mr. Iruka to think that it would be better if I was the one who died compared to the current result?" Hearing this, Iruka tried his best to defend himself. "No, I didn't mean that, Naruto. What the Nine-Tails demon fox did has nothing to do with you, and the sins it committed should not be attributed to you. Yes, as you said, since it has nothing to do with me, there is no need for me to swallow my anger and be criticized by others, right? I don't want to endure it anymore. It's better that from now on I become what they fear, Iruka teacher." A cold smile appeared on Naruto's face. Anyway, he didn't belong to this world, so he just made a fuss. The terrible declaration from Naruto's mouth had a different understanding in Iruka's heart, as if it was the bullying treatment of the world which finally overwhelmed Naruto and forced him to make such a choice. Even that cold smile was interpreted by Iruka as a sign that the boy felt powerless against such a world and finally collapsed from it. 2 lines of hot tears burst out of his eyes, and Iruka took Naruto in front of him into his arms. "None of this is your fault. If I had worked harder, maybe what happened today wouldn't have happened." Listening to Iruka's hoarse speech, Naruto was a little confused. He didn't expect the other party's reaction. "No, I just wiped out Mr. Mizuki completely, not even a trace was left." Naruto tried to make Iruka understand the reality. "It's okay. I witnessed the whole process. Everything is Mizuki's problem. Even if Master Hokage asks, I will answer truthfully and explain the question clearly. It's okay, I saw it all. It was that guy Mizuki who messed up first. Even if Master Hokage asks, I will answer truthfully. This is not your problem," Iruka retorted. Now that he said it, Naruto had nothing more to say. "By the way, Naruto, I have something for you." Iruka wiped the tears from his face, took off the Konoha forehead protector he wore on his forehead and replaced the goggles originally worn on Naruto's head. Iruka touched Naruto's head and said, "You have officially graduated from today. Congratulations on becoming a real ninja." Now he has fully accepted the fact that he has traveled through time again. With the complete integration with the original memory of this body, he temporarily recalled some more information about the Hokage story, but only a little bit. After all, he is not a die-hard Hokage fan. Thousands of years of Shinigami life have almost erased his memory. He still needs some time to adapt to his new identity. After all, it is soul traveling, but Naruto is alone, which saves him some trouble. And Ryutsu, who has just finished squandering his body, still needs time to recover, and the speed of the knot and body sleep is not as fast as in the world of Shinigami. The knot and the soul are the organs that produce Ryutsu. Perhaps it is because people in this world do not use Ryutsu, so the knot and the soul are naturally weaker. If the problem of Ryutsu's recovery cannot be solved, then someone as strong as him will have to learn the chakra system of this world and have one more option. As the sun rose, the ray of sunlight completely illuminated their faces. Iruka said, "To celebrate your successful graduation, I invite you to eat ramen." "Speaking of which, teacher, does your injury not matter?" "It's okay, it's just a minor problem. Compared to the dangers encountered during the mission, this is nothing." Sarutobi Hiruzen's pupils trembled as he looked at the picture in the crystal ball. Even at this age, with all his years of experience, he could not tell what kind of ninjutsu Naruto was releasing. Why is there such a powerful ninjutsu? If such a technique was recorded in the Book of Sealings, I should not be unimpressed. Such a powerful technique should not be unknown. Sarutobi Hiruzen took a puff of cigarette casually and murmured to himself. Except for this, it seems that the seal of the power of Nine-Tails has not been loosened, but after all such a thing happened, it is better to observe it for a while to avoid irritation. It was just the opposite for him. After making a decision in his mind, he ordered Anbu to go immediately to recover the sealed book. He temporarily suppressed the fact that Naruto could release the strange technique and at the same time gave the order to Iruka, who was currently the second insider, to keep silent. Chapter 3 Little Hinata is cute. 313. Chapter 3 Little Hinata is cute. Naruto followed his memory and walked on the way home. Thinking back to the Iraku ramen I just tasted, I have to admit that it tastes really good and the price is not expensive. As he approached the door of his house, Naruto noticed from a distance that a girl with short hair was pacing in front of the door. She seemed to want to knock on the door, but her hand stopped midair when she got close to the door. Naruto learned from his memory that it was a girl named Hyuga Hinata, and judging from her usual behavior she obviously had a good impression of him. He looked at Hinata's slightly undulating lines wrapped in long clothes and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. When he was in Hueco Mundo, both Nelly and Harabelle were all large sizes. After looking at them for a long time, they were replaced by small ones. Seems pretty good too. Naruto walked up behind her silently and whispered in her ear. Hinata. Ah. Is it Naruto-kun? Hinata was like a frightened rabbit. A slight blush rose on her cheeks. Naruto looked at Hinata with a smile and said, "What do you want from me? You're wandering in front of my house early in the morning. You can't be lost, right?" Hinata lowered her head, not daring to look at Naruto, and said softly, "It's because Naruto has always wanted to become a ninja, but he failed to pass the graduation exam. I'm a little worried." While Hinata was speaking, Naruto had already come to her side, admiring the fair and flawless face unique to her age from close range. Naruto asked with a smile, "What do I have to worry about?" Hinata raised her head and found Naruto's face right in front of her eyes. She could even feel his warm breath. Her face suddenly turned red to her ears and she couldn't help but turn her head. He was so nervous that he stuttered and explained, I am worried that Naruto-kun will be depressed by this and I want to cheer Naruto-kun up." "Why don't you say you are worried about me? Why are you avoiding me instead? Or do you actually hate me too?" Naruto said with a slightly depressed tone on purpose. Hinata hurriedly waved her hands in denial. "No, Naruto-kun, I didn't." But when she noticed Naruto's blue eyes looking at her affectionately, his handsome little face suddenly turned redder and a faint steam even came out of his head. "Naruto-kun, why are you staring at me like that?" Hinata asked timidly. "So beautiful." "Hey." Hinata's brain almost shut down after hearing Naruto's words. Hey, Naruto-kun actually complimented me on my beauty." Naruto lifted Hinata's chin with his right hand, stared into Hinata's eyes and said, "Speaking of which, I never noticed it before. Looking at it up close today, the Byakugan is really beautiful and mesmerizing." In the village, everyone's feelings towards the Byakugan were more of awe, and quite a few people even thought it was an ominous symbol. Hinata has been bullied for this since she was a child, and it was even more impossible to hear such praise. Her heart beat faster for a while. Hinata could clearly feel that Naruto today was completely different from before, but she didn't hate Naruto like this. As her heartbeat accelerated, she felt that she would become weird if she stayed any longer, so she quickly pushed Naruto away and apologized loudly. "I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, I'll leave if there's nothing else." After saying that, he ran away from here. Looking at Hinata leaving in embarrassment, Naruto smiled and gave his evaluation. "Quite cute." Naruto did not rush in but turned his head to look in one direction and waited quietly. Because he could clearly detect that a Ryutsu was approaching him quickly. Although people in this world do not understand the application of Ryutsu in cultivation methods, they still have Ryutsu in them to a greater or lesser extent. So they didn't hide Ryutsu's consciousness, so it would be easy for Naruto to sense them. About half a minute later, an Anbu member wearing a special mask appeared in front of Naruto. He said bluntly, "Master Hokage wants to see you." "Understood." Naruto didn't show too much surprise and just answered calmly. After receiving the answer, the Anbu member was about to turn around and leave. After pondering for a moment, he asked, "Did you sense that I was coming?" "Well, I've sensed it a long time ago. It's too obvious." Naruto waved his hand and pushed the door open and entered the home. The Anbu member was left standing there in deep thought. He can actually sense my existence. Is it because the Nine-Tails demon fox is sealed inside her body? But after all, he is just a child who has failed some people's tests. Or am I reaching such an age that I am no longer suitable for Anbu's job? Old single apartment, small room. There is a faint smell of spoiled food in the air and the wallpaper has already turned yellow. Unwashed clothes can be seen everywhere in the room, as well as various entertainment books scattered on the floor. Naruto looked at this scene, scratched his head helplessly and murmured to himself, "This living habit is really bad." Recalling that when he was at Hwako Mundo, Loli and Minori were responsible for cleaning up the room like this. He had already begun to think in his mind that he had to find someone to take over the job quickly. But now he just wants to lie on the bed and have a good sleep. On the one hand, it is the mental fatigue caused by the integration of memory and thought. On the other hand, there is physical fatigue. Before he traveled through time, this body was already exhausted from avoiding Mizuki. After he arrived, he squandered all the Ryutsu in his body, reaching its limit. But speaking of Ryutsu, when he was in contact with Hinata just now, he faintly felt that the knot and the sleep were abnormally active, and Ryutsu's recovery speed was also significantly increased several times. But this kind of thing will have to be studied later, and the most urgent thing now is to get some sleep. I casually took off my clothes and shoes and lay down on the bed comfortably. I had to admit that no matter where I was, the bed was the one that gave people the most sense of security and happiness. As the body fell into sleep, Naruto also appeared in the inner world. When Naruto opened his eyes again, the scene in front of him had completely changed. There were dim lights flashing above his head, and there was a long and dark corridor in front of him. Old and rusty water pipes were scattered all over the wall like tree roots, and there was a shallow layer of dirty water on the ground. Interesting, such an inner world is really new. Naruto stroked his chin, strolling in this space with interest, looking at the scene in this space. Without walking too far, an extremely huge iron door came into Naruto's field of vision. In the middle of the iron door there was a large seal. Boom! Nine-Tails' huge body was sealed in that small space. The sharp claws hit the cage hard. A huge sound echoed throughout the space, and the strong impact caused violent ripples on the water surface. "Come any closer, kid, and I'll tear you apart." Naruto looked at Nine-Tails' huge body and angry appearance and couldn't help but think of Yami far away in Hwako Mundo. At the same time, he raised his hand and made a simple comparison. Naruto smiled and said, "Compared with Yami after the return of the blade, your body looks relatively small." Although Nine-Tails didn't understand what Naruto was referring to as Yami comparing it with other things and actually coming to the conclusion that he was relatively small was undoubtedly a kind of blasphemy to himself, and his anger instantly reached its peak. "Damn boy, how dare you humiliate me! I will break free of this cage sooner or later. Then you will wait for death." Nine-Tails roared, slapping its claws on the iron cage, making a deafening sound. This arrogant look really looks like Yami. Naruto secretly came to a conclusion in his heart, but since things like Yami are easy to handle, he used absolute power to conquer Yami to make him surrender, so now he just needs to do the same thing. Naruto stepped closer to the iron cage. This arrogant move surprised Nine-Tails. Instead of taking action rashly, it looked at the human and thought about getting closer and moving forward. Naruto stood between the gaps in the iron door, raised his head and looked at Nine-Tails and said calmly, "Do you know what state I am in right now?" Before Naruto could finish speaking, Nine-Tails raised its claws and aimed at Naruto at the gap, growling ferociously, "I don't care about you, go to hell, kid." Nine-Tails attacked with all its strength, not caring that the narrow gap would hurt its claws. Naruto did not dodge and allowed the claw to hit him. As if he was not affected by the attack, he just continued arrogantly, "The me you see now is in a mental state. In other words, I am stronger than you now." Naruto finished speaking word by word and stretched out his hand to lift Nine-Tails' paw. Except for the ripples on the water, he didn't even move a step, and there was no trace of any injuries on his body. On the contrary, Nine-Tails' claws were like attacking on steel, and several cracks appeared. "How the hell is this possible? Who are you?" Nine-Tails had a horrified look on his face. Chapter 4, I hate people looking down on me. 4313. Chapter 4, I hate people looking down on me. Naruto said in a cold tone, "After all, I still don't like the feeling of being looked down upon." Nine-Tails felt a little shaken in his heart. Even if he was still in a sealed state, the attack just now was his real power. How could it have no effect on him at all? Could it be that what this kid said is true? If you don't believe me, damn it. Naruto clasped his hands together, extending his index finger and wrapping it around his two middle fingers. Bakudo 99 Forbidden. Huge leather straps appeared out of thin air in the cage wrapping Nine-Tails' two front legs behind him, and nails were driven into his body at fixed distances to secure him. Damn, what are you doing? But it was far from over. Naruto squatted down and thrust his index finger and middle finger together into the water. Bakudo 99 2nd Edition Swastika Ban. The first song stops the tension. Chuku Balian Baluan. Naruto's power suddenly turned into a huge white cloth completely wrapping Nine-Tails' entire body. Hundreds of iron bars generated countless iron thorns which penetrated Nine-Tails' body and firmly fixed it to the ground. In the end, Naruto was left with only one right eye, and the right corner of his mouth was not bound. He saw shock, horror and anger in Nine-Tails' eyes, and the original look that wanted to kill was no longer there. I hope you don't make a mistake about who the owner of this place is. I hate it when others look down on me. Naruto snapped his fingers. I don't like the environment here either. Under the astonished gaze of Nine-Tails, the entire space shook violently, and the original underground pipe-like scene gradually collapsed and disintegrated, even revealing the blue sky. The ground beneath his feet was gradually replaced by the exterior walls of the building made of glass windows. Naruto watched the changes here with satisfaction. I hope you will have changed the next time I see you. Naruto gave Nine-Tails one last meaningful look and exited this mental space. In the end, only Nine-Tails, whose pupils were shocked, was firmly fixed to the ground and unable to move. It has experienced so many Jinchuriki, and this is the first time someone has been able to shock it beyond measure. By the time Naruto woke up due to hunger, it was already evening. He touched his protesting belly, thinking that after finally changing the world he should seize the opportunity and taste more of the food here. But he took out his wallet based on his memory and looked at the few steel coins left inside, feeling a little overwhelmed. Unsurprisingly, as the protagonist, Naruto's start was much worse than that of Ichigo. In the end, I had to find a piece of bread from the room which had already been put on the hard bread, and a bottle of milk whose expiration date was blurred. It seems that making money needs to be put on the agenda, and the quality of life urgently needs to be improved. Then he remembered what the Anbu member had conveyed in the morning. After a brief wash, he relied on his memory and headed to the Hokage building. Dong dong. Come in, Sarutobi Hiruzen said while handling the documents in his hand. I'm coming in. After hearing that the person coming in was Naruto, he put down his work, carefully examined Naruto, who came in, and carefully felt the flow of chakra on his body. But what surprised Sarutobi Hiruzen was that compared to the loosening of the seal of Nine-Tails that he was worried about, the breath of Nine-Tails was even weaker than before. At such a close distance it was so thin that it was almost undetectable. What's going on? Could it be that the emotional catharsis stabilized the seal? And Naruto was also examining Sarutobi Hiruzen in front of him, feeling the existence of this person called Hokage and secretly evaluating the strength of the world's top combat power. Although people in this world do not practice Ryutsu, excellent people are not bad in all aspects, so Naruto can still detect the good Ryutsu. Hello, Hokage. Naruto took the initiative to greet him and also referred to the original reaction that Naruto would make. This is something he had considered a long time ago. The Ryutsu of this body is not enough to support his full strength, and Zanpakuto has not yet been built, so he considered lying dormant for a while to accumulate strength. Sarutobi Hiruzen smiled and said, "Why do you start calling me Hokage-sama? You used to call me Hokage Grandpa. Suddenly it has become unfamiliar." Naruto waved his hand and said, "Nothing. You little brat, really, I clearly sent someone to notify you in the morning. What time is it now?" Sarutobi Hiruzen smiled and shook his head. Naruto just scratched his head embarrassedly. Sorry, because of what happened last night I was too tired and overslept." Sarutobi Hiruzen did not pursue it because he also knew what happened last night. He got straight to the point. "I have heard Iruka's report about what happened last night, and I have a general understanding of it. I called you here mainly to ask you about why you can release Kido." Naruto was not surprised by this question. If he didn't ask about this matter, it would be better to say that if he didn't ask this question he would feel more strange. Then Naruto gathered his emotions and slowly said, "I learned all those things from that scroll." After I opened the scroll, the knowledge about Kido entered my mind directly. Sarutobi Hiruzen did not doubt Naruto's words. After all, Naruto has always lived under certain surveillance. Not to mention that no strange people approached him, there was no abnormality in his daily activities. Regarding Naruto's sudden ability to use the technique called Kido, Sarutobi Hiruzen was more inclined to believe that Naruto had just mastered it. Perhaps the sealed book did hide some secrets and a special method was needed to interpret the hidden content. He planned to find Naruto to study this matter together after a while and did not want to stimulate Naruto for the time being. Sarutobi Hiruzen changed the subject and said, "I haven't congratulated you on becoming a real ninja yet. What do you want to do after becoming a ninja?" Naruto answered without hesitation, "I want to make money." Hearing this answer, Sarutobi Hiruzen was a little surprised and asked back, "Why do I remember that you said your dream was to become a Hokage before Naruto?" Naruto took a deep breath and began to brew his emotions. Although he couldn't let go of being killed by Aizen-sama's sneak attack, he couldn't deny that Aizen-sama still taught him a lot of things, one of which was that life is like a play and it all depends on acting. Considering Naruto's current age, he currently adhered to the central idea that the crying child gets candy and started his performance. Naruto smiled self-deprecatingly and said, "Forget about the Hokage thing. How can a guy like me get everyone's recognition? Compared to such an unrealistic Kyoka Suigetsu, I who have no parents to take care of me just hope to improve my life with my own hands." Naruto rolled his red eyes and looked at Sarutobi Hiruzen and said bitterly, "I don't understand why so many people are always hostile to me when it's not my fault." Sarutobi Hiruzen opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he didn't say a word for a long time and finally turned into a long sigh. Chapter 5, Don't Make a Bad Face in Front of Me. 313th. Chapter 5, Don't Make a Bad Face in Front of Me. Sarutobi Hiruzen fell silent and began to seriously think about whether he was wrong in his treatment of Naruto. What kind of blow would make Naruto give up his original dream? In Sarutobi Hiruzen's view, such a change was definitely not due to one or two things that caused Naruto to suddenly become like this, freezing 3 feet in a day. In the final analysis, it was due to long-term accumulation that Naruto became like this. He remembered again what Iruka said in the morning report, hoping not to blame Naruto too much. This was not Naruto's fault. As a teacher, he should bear this responsibility. Sarutobi Hiruzen began to seriously reflect on whether he was too harsh on Naruto. Should Naruto, who lost his parents, really deserve this? If Iruka as a teacher has responsibilities and it has evolved into this situation, how can I have less responsibilities than Iruka? In the final analysis, it was indeed my negligence. Sarutobi Hiruzen said, looking at the ceiling with emotion. "What's wrong, Hokage-sama?" Naruto looked at him with tearful eyes and asked. "Naruto, take the money first." Sarutobi Hiruzen said, taking out a bulging small money bag and placing it on the table. Naruto wiped the tears from his eyes and quickly stepped forward to put the money bag into his arms while pretending to refuse. "This is not good, Hokage-sama. How can I accept your money?" Sarutobi Hiruzen was amused by Naruto's actions and laughed and scolded. "You brat, this is my gift to congratulate you on officially becoming a ninja." "Thank you, Hokage-sama. After weighing the heavy money bag, I was able to confirm that my performance should be a success. This amount of money is much more than the monthly relief fund. At least for a while I don't have to worry about the quality of life. Tomorrow is your day to assign the ninja team. Go back and rest early and remember not to be late." Sarutobi Hiruzen was silent for a moment. "Will you resent them treating you like this?" Naruto pondered for a moment before answering, "No." After getting the answer, Sarutobi Hiruzen said nothing more. Naruto said goodbye and left. But what Sarutobi Hiruzen didn't know was that the answer just now was from Naruto's heart, but Naruto actually omitted a lot. Now he doesn't care what those guys did in the past because it has nothing to do with him. According to his character, if a guy like that appears now, he will not live long, so there is no such thing as resentment. Naruto, who was walking home, could feel that some Ryutsu hidden in the dark had left. It should be Sarutobi Hiruzen's instruction, which also shows that his wariness about himself has dropped. This is a good sign. After the other party is completely at ease with himself, he can start his plan. After all, his strength has not been fully restored and he has not officially fought against the strong men in this world, so it is always wise to be cautious. Today's dinner was at Ichiraku Ramen mainly because it was convenient on the way and secondly the taste was pretty good. After all, Naruto was used to being poor and didn't have much information about delicious food in his memory and he was too lazy to look for it at the moment. At night Naruto also studied the multiple shadow clone technique. Before his consciousness took over, Naruto had already learned this technique from the scroll. He only created a clone and could feel the chakra and ryutsu on his body being dispersed. After a brief chat with his other self, his evaluation of this ninjutsu became even higher. For Naruto, the most important point is that the clone has its own memory and can think independently from the original consciousness, and after the clone comes into contact the memory can return to the original body. As long as you make good use of this feature you can help him accomplish many things. Naruto couldn't help but murmur to himself, "It's really interesting technology. I'm becoming more and more curious about this world." Early the next morning Naruto had already washed up and set off for the ninja school. When he arrived in the classroom many people had already arrived earlier than him. They were excitedly discussing who would soon become their teammates. They were also curious about which Jonin the teacher of the three-person team would be. Shikamaru, who was in a daze out of boredom, noticed Naruto's appearance and asked in surprise, "Hey Naruto, why are you here? Aren't you the only ones who have passed the graduation exam?" Naruto pointed at the forehead protector on his head and said, "Please look at this. Isn't this a symbol of qualification?" Upon hearing the news the surrounding students briefly turned their attention to Naruto but soon returned to their own affairs. After all, there is nothing worth caring about at the end of a crane, but I pray silently that I won't be so unlucky as to be in the same group as Naruto. Soon the remaining students and Iruka, who was in charge of dividing the classes, arrived in the classroom one after another. Iruka briefly explained the grouping and allocation of Jonin and immediately began to recite the grouping results. Class 7 Haruno Sakura Uzumaki Naruto Uchiha Sasuke. After learning the result, little Sakura was the most excited and stood up to celebrate. The other girls in the class all raised jealous questions. After all, for them the cold and handsome Sasuke coupled with his outstanding performance are irresistible and extremely lethal weapons. But there was also one person who was equally disappointed, not because he couldn't team up with Sasuke but because he felt a pity that he couldn't team up with Naruto. That was Hinata, sitting in the back row still thinking about what happened when she met Naruto yesterday. Naruto felt Hinata's gaze and turned to look at her, giving her a smile as their eyes met. Hinata's face suddenly turned red and she quickly looked away. The grouping ended soon and Iruka would introduce Jonin to the students in the afternoon before letting the students disperse to rest. Naruto still understands the early plot, especially after the memory fusion and consolidation the early plot becomes clearer. There was something Naruto wanted to test, so he followed Sasuke silently as he left alone. It wasn't until he reached a corner that Sasuke turned his head and spoke coldly. "Hey, how long do you plan to follow me?" After Naruto glanced around to make sure there was no one else, he nodded with satisfaction and said to himself, "Well, there happens to be no one else, so even if you lose to me your self-esteem won't be too hurt." Sasuke frowned and asked in confusion, "What are you talking about?" Naruto said calmly, "I'm mainly here to tell you that we are all in the same team and don't hold me back in the future." Sasuke said with a cold face, "What stupid things are you talking about? This is what I should be saying to you. Bakudo number 4 this rope." As Naruto chanted, a yellow light cord composed of ryutsu instantly entangled Sasuke. Just as he was about to collapse, Naruto grabbed Sasuke's face with his right hand. Sasuke looked at being sealed by the rope with a look of shock in his eyes and said coldly, "If you don't have the strength, don't make a bad face in front of me." Chapter 6 First Kiss and Complete Abuse. 6/313. Chapter 6 First Kiss and Complete Abuse. Naruto used the transformation technique, transformed into Sasuke's appearance and found little Sakura, who was eating lunch alone on the seat. Naruto wanted to verify whether the reason for the abnormal activity of the not-in-body sleep was contact with women. After all, as Naruto, it is still difficult for him to have close contact with other women reasonably. He happened to still remember the plot of Naruto disguising himself as Sasuke, so he took the opportunity to verify it. Little Sakura also happened to notice Naruto's fiery gaze, and she was still imagining the scenario where Sasuke fell in love with her. But little Sakura quickly lowered her head and sighed. This kind of thing was just her own fantasy after all, and Sasuke would not do such a thing. Sasuke, disguised as Naruto, had already arrived in front of little Sakura, gently lifted the hair from little Sakura's face, held her face with one hand, looked down at little Sakura affectionately and said, "Every time I look at you I am always attracted to your beautiful forehead, as if there is a kind of magic that makes people want to have it." Listening to these loving words, a trace of astonishment flashed across Sakura's face. She had never thought that the words in her fantasy could actually be heard spoken by Sasuke in reality. After confirming that this was not her fantasy, little Sakura felt her heart pounding. She blushed and asked softly with her heart beating, "Sasuke, are you serious?" "Of course I'm serious. Do you think I'm Naruto's kind of guy who likes to joke around?" Naruto asked with a smile. Little Sakura said coquettishly, "Don't mention that spoiler now." Then little Sakura closed her eyes silently and continued, "In order to get Sasuke's approval I am willing to do anything. Who made me like Sasuke from a long time ago?" Feeling the ambiguous atmosphere, Naruto let little Sakura hold his head, and her lips, as delicate as rose petals, slowly moved closer to Naruto. The next second Naruto felt the warmth between those lips. At the same time he felt the abnormal activity of lock knot and soul sleep, and Ryutsu's recovery speed increased instantly. Sure enough, as he suspected, as long as this body has a relatively intimate behavior with a girl, it can activate the lock knot and soul sleep and quickly restore Ryutsu in a short period of time. Although strictly speaking Naruto hadn't tested whether the same thing would happen with men, he had no personal interest in it. Just at this moment Sasuke arrived in a panic and shouted with gritted teeth, "Damn you, Naruto!" Sasuke's shout quickly attracted little Sakura's attention. She opened her eyes and looked at Sasuke in the distance, then looked at Sasuke in front of her and asked with some confusion, "What the hell is going on?" Sasuke clicked his tongue and said in disgust, "Naruto, you guy don't do boring things in my face." The sound of the quarrel quickly attracted the attention of the people around, and everyone focused their attention here. Little Sakura listened to the words of Sasuke in the distance, and then she was slightly stunned. A bad premonition arose in her heart and she frowned and asked, "Naruto?" Turning his head to look at Sasuke in front of him, he also cancelled the transformation and returned to Naruto's appearance. Sakura's face turned red with anger when she thought about what had just happened and that the person she had just been with was not Sasuke but Naruto. He raised his hand to make close contact with Naruto's cheek, but Naruto easily held the white wrist. Naruto put little Sakura's hand on her leg and said calmly, "Don't worry, I will show you right away how fragile the Sasuke you like is." Naruto turned around and smiled at Sasuke and said, "Why does my defeated general have the right to point fingers at me?" Sasuke thought about what had just happened and argued angrily, "Are you kidding me? If it wasn't for your sneak attack I might have lost to you." Naruto continued with a calm expression and said, "How about that? Do you want to try it again? I don't need the trick I just did, and I can also let you stand there with one hand and wait for you to make a move." The veins on Sasuke's forehead twitched slightly and his whole face was so gloomy that it seemed like it could drip water. He said, "There must be a limit to being arrogant. Come here and I will let you know the price of arrogance." Everyone obviously noticed something from this conversation. It seemed that a conflict broke out between the two people who had just been assigned to a team. "It's so new. Why do you think the two of them are quarreling over little Sakura?" A boy joked but was immediately retorted by the girl next to him. "Are you stupid? How could Sasuke be angry with someone like Sakura-chan? It's a bit strange. Why is Naruto so calm but Sasuke is so angry? Could it be that Sasuke really lost to Naruto?" People who were relatively indifferent to scandals between men and women quickly discovered some details. "What idiot are you talking about? Naruto, that guy can beat Sasuke. Don't make people laugh. You have a greater chance of beating Sasuke than him." "Forget it, you're kidding me. How can I beat Sasuke? That's not right." Hinata heard Naruto's name from the crowd's comments and squeezed through the crowd to find out. Naruto didn't care at all about people's comments and onlookers, or in other words, this was what he wanted. He needed everyone's testimony. Witness that starting from today Uzumaki Naruto will no longer be the bully tale in their memories. Naruto walked towards Sasuke, put his left hand behind his back and hooked him with his right hand. "You can start at any time. I have no problem with sneak attacks. As long as you can hit me I will lose." "And I," Naruto said, raising his right hand, I will be merciful. After all we will all. You are a teammate of the same team so I won't embarrass you too much. I can just give you a gentle slap with this hand. Listening to Naruto's arrogant declaration, everyone onlookers immediately burst into an uproar. No, Naruto is crazy, he actually provoked Sasuke. He's so arrogant that he loses as long as Sasuke hits him. Listening to the discussions of the people around him, Sasuke was on the verge of losing his mind. There was only one thought left in his mind, which was to give Naruto in front of him a good beating. He exerted force under his feet, waved his fists and rushed towards Naruto like a bow and arrow. But it was just a fake move. He quickly came behind Naruto and punched him. Naruto just chanted calmly, "One of Bakudo Sai." Suddenly Sasuke's fist stopped and his hands were held behind his back by a strong force. This sudden change made him lose his center of gravity and he was about to fall to the ground. At this moment Naruto turned around and drew a perfect curve with the back of his right hand in the air, landing accurately on the side of Sasuke's face. There was a snap and the entire playground was silent. Chapter 7 Everyone is shocked. 7/313. Chapter 7 Everyone is shocked. Sasuke sat there on his knees with his eyes wandering. It seemed that something in his heart was greatly shaken compared to winning or losing. Little Sakura also walked forward quickly and tried to help Sasuke up but was pushed away. The look in her eyes when she looked at Naruto became more complicated. The Naruto in front of her seemed to be obviously different from the Naruto in her memory. I don't know who said, "Holy shit," breaking the calm, and everyone instantly became excited. Really or not, what did I see? Naruto actually defeated Sasuke and he did it so easily. Ino looked at Naruto and murmured to himself, "Is Naruto really that powerful?" Shikamaru scratched his head and said, "It's really exaggerated. After the lesson learned last time, do you still want to defeat me with only physical skills? You really look down on me," Naruto said while looking down at Sasuke and at the same time stretched out his hand to him. Sasuke slapped his hand away, his eyes regained their sharpness and said, "Stop pretending, I will definitely defeat you next time. This kind of thing is impossible. What you said is 1,000 years too early." Naruto spread his hands indifferently. "But don't mention it, bullying Sasuke is quite interesting. I don't know how long it will take for such an unruly guy to be trained to be obedient. After all, he is the second male lead and it is best to be obedient." The Jonin showed up and took away their respective team members, ending the farce. On the roof, Hatake Kakashi looked helplessly at the three people in front of him. Sasuke, whose self-esteem seemed to have been severely hit, little Sakura, who was trying to comfort Sasuke, and Naruto, who was the culprit of everything. Their results were all confirmed by Kakashi in advance. Although he had heard from the third Hokage about Naruto's situation and was told to pay more attention to Naruto's situation, he did not expect it to unfold like this. Kakashi coughed twice, breaking the awkward silence between the four of them. "Okay, let us each introduce ourselves." Kakashi glanced at the three of them again, "Then let me give you a demonstration now. My name is Hatake Kakashi. I am the Jonin in charge of you. What do you like and dislike? There's nothing to talk about if you have dreams and you have quite a lot of interests." Little Sakura complained, dissatisfied. "I said I was introducing myself, but I didn't say anything except my name." "Don't worry about the details, it's your turn." Naruto saw that little Sakura didn't take the initiative to speak and Sasuke on the side was staring at him with a murderous look and then raised his hand and said, "How about I come first? I am Uzumaki Naruto. I like girls and the feeling of being alive. I hate guys who are stronger than me. My dream is to live leisurely." Kakashi tilted his head and asked, "So you hate me? How could that be? You are a teacher." Naruto waved his hand quickly. Seeing this, little Sakura followed Naruto and said, "I am Haruno Sakura, the person I like." As she spoke, little Sakura looked at Sasuke only to see him looking at Naruto with murderous intent and then followed his gaze to look at Naruto, recalling what just happened, and fell into silence without continuing. So even the only girl looked troubled. Kakashi complained helplessly in his heart. Kakashi waited for a long time and didn't hear anything else, so he had to say to Sasuke, "I've introduced both of them but you are the only one left." Sasuke spoke slowly upon hearing this but did not move his eyes away from Naruto's face. "Uchiha Sasuke, there is no point in discussing what I like and dislike. I want to revive the Uchiha clan and kill that man, but before doing these two things, Naruto, I will definitely defeat you and make you my transformation." A strong stepping stone. Naruto sighed and looked at the sky boredly and said, I've already said it's 1,000 years too early for you to defeat me. You might as well do the first two things earlier. If you take me as your target you will never be able to defeat me in this life. Don't even think about doing those two things. Kakashi scratched his head. The problem of this team seemed to be more serious than he expected. He originally thought that Uchiha's boy would be the strongest among the three, but it didn't look like this. Forget it, just introduce yourself here. Next I will talk about tomorrow's mission. Kakashi said and distributed the introduction with the mission requirements to the hands of the three people. Didn't we just take the graduation exam and have another practice soon? Little Sakura asked suspiciously. This is not the kind you usually conduct. In this wild survival exercise your opponent is me. Isn't that nothing special? Little Sakura murmured, looking at the precautions listed on the list. I didn't want to say it originally because if I say it you will definitely be scared and choose to give up. Kakashi pretended to be mysterious and continued, of the 27 graduating students only 9 can be recognized as officially becoming genin. People, that is to say, this is a test with an elimination rate of over 60%. After hearing this the expressions of both Sakura and Sasuke obviously changed. Only Naruto still had a relaxed expression. The Ryutsu restored by kissing Sakura before excluding the 2 Kido used to tease Sasuke was still quite abundant. It was enough to use a high-level Kido like Black Coffin again, so he was just dealing with a test in the early stages of the plot and he was not worried at all. Naruto turned to look at Sasuke and said, Then you must not hold me back tomorrow. Sasuke just stared at Naruto and seemed to have given up arguing with Naruto. The little Sakura on the side said angrily, Have you two enough? Please, this is a test with a 60% elimination rate. Please don't get into trouble, okay? You are still in the mood to argue at this time. Naruto looked at little Sakura affectionately and said, Don't worry, I will definitely let you pass. Of course we are a team and I will also be responsible for making Sasuke pass. Although little Sakura wanted to refute immediately, but thinking about what happened just now, Naruto easily defeated Sasuke, she was a little unsure. When she heard Naruto mention the word responsibility later, she couldn't help but think of what she had just lost and subtle ripples arose in her heart. Finally he just said, You'd better not be a bad mouther. Who needs your help? Don't be too self-righteous. I don't need companions. Sasuke also retorted, You are too weak. How can you take care of your companions when you can't even protect yourself? Naruto teased. Seeing that he was ignored, Kakashi began to have a headache about how to carry out the teaching work in the future. Before leaving he explained, Okay, we are dismissed. We will gather at the training ground on time tomorrow morning. Don't forget to bring the necessary tools. Chapter 8 The Real Hunter. 8/313. Chapter 8 The Real Hunter. Time soon came to the next day. Naruto deliberately set out after breakfast in the morning. Because he remembered that the test would last until noon and lunch was also designed as a part of the test. But Kakashi came later than expected. After the three of them met in the training ground early, they waited for an hour before Kakashi slowly appeared. Are you here so early? Sorry, I forgot the time when I was doing something righteous. Kakashi scratched his head and tried to get away with it with a lame excuse. Please Mr. Kakashi, we graduated from the ninja school, not the kindergarten, so don't use such a perfunctory excuse. Little Sakura said dissatisfiedly. Seeing that his excuse was unsuccessful, Kakashi immediately changed his strategy and changed the subject, taking out a cheap alarm clock from his pocket. He set the alarm clock to afternoon and placed it on a wooden stake. He took out 2 small bells from his pocket and shook them in front of the 3 people to introduce them. The rules are very simple. Those who fail to grab the bell within the time limit will be tied up by me and not given lunch and will also be eliminated. Wait Mr. Kakashi, what does elimination mean? Little Sakura asked with some concern. It's very simple. If you fail the test and are eliminated, it means that the person needs to go back to shinobi school for retraining. Kakashi grabbed the bell in his hand, but don't think it's easy to snatch the bell from me. With your level, if you don't have the determination to kill me, there is no chance of success. Kakashi hung the 2 bells on his waist and added, You have understood the rules right. If you don't work hard, you may all be eliminated. The 3 did not speak except Naruto, who still had a relaxed expression, and the expressions of little Sakura and Sasuke were quite ugly. They still had an idea of Jonan's strength in their hearts and naturally knew how difficult it was to take things from Jonan even if the other party did not use his full strength. Kakashi looked at the expressions of the three people and was quite satisfied. He achieved the effect he wanted. Kakashi clapped his hands and said, "Okay, since you don't say anything, I'll assume you're ready, so let's start now." As soon as Kakashi finished speaking, Sasuke and little Sakura had instantly moved from their original positions to find their own hiding places, but only Naruto stood there without moving. Kakashi looked at Naruto in front of him and asked with a headache, "Naruto, aren't you going to move? I can give you another minute to hide yourself." Kakashi roughly felt little Sakura and Sasuke again, and they had basically completed their own hiding. Damn, what is Naruto doing standing there? Doesn't he think he has a chance of winning against Jonan? Little Sakura hid in the bushes, his face full of horror. Naruto, that BD, is he going to confront Jonan head on? There should be a limit to arrogance. Sasuke, who was hiding in the tree, frowned and looked at Naruto in the distance. Naruto stood there twisting his neck to stretch while Kakashi nonchalantly said, "Isn't the mission to seize the bell? If so, why go to such great lengths? Isn't it the best choice to just start snatching it? You seem very confident," Kakashi said, and his figure disappeared from the place in an instant and appeared behind Naruto the next moment, holding his hands in a gesture of 1,000 years of death. As a ninja, concealment and hiding are the most basic. In order to prevent your weaknesses from being exposed to the enemy, it is a taboo to bear to leave your back to the enemy, so let me give you a good one. Let's take a lesson. He was about to attack Naruto, but Naruto didn't panic and just said calmly, "One of Bakudo Sai." Kakashi's hands were instantly behind his back and he was shocked and retreated to distance himself. What kind of ninjutsu is this? It can make the opponent put his hands behind his back. Is this the move he used on Sasuke? Could this be the technique called Kido that Master Hokage had told Naruto to use? As someone who had experienced it, Sasuke naturally recognized that move at a glance. Naruto calmly turned to look at Kakashi and said, "Kakashi is right, you shouldn't expose your backside to the enemy, but have you ever thought that maybe I am treating this situation like this because I am confident?" Seeing Kakashi trying to confidently remove the blockage, Naruto said calmly, "Kakashi-sensei should still remember that you arrived here an hour late. Do you think I was just waiting for this hour?" Kakashi frowned when he heard this and asked with some uncertainty, "If you say that, have you made full use of this hour?" Naruto did not answer his question but just raised his palm and pointed it in the direction of Kakashi and began to chant, "O King. Masks of flesh and blood, all things that fly high and bear the name of human beings. Burning heat and struggle, roll back across the sea and move forward. Hado's 31 red cannon." Ryutsu quickly gathered and compressed in Naruto's palm, turning into a blazing ball of fire and shooting out. The high density of Ryutsu and its terrifying high temperature made the three people with extremely poor perception of Ryutsu aware of the red fire cannon. What kind of ninjutsu is this? It doesn't require seals but requires chanting such a long sentence. Little Sakura was shocked when she saw this. What is this? Naruto, does he actually know fire style? Sasuke was also very confused. Kakashi looked at the rapid approach of the red fire cannon. Although he didn't know exactly what technique it was and what its principle was, he still sensed the danger. He immediately used a substitute to escape. The moment the red cannon touched the stand-in wooden block, a huge roar occurred. Naruto was obviously not too surprised by this situation. If the Jonin in this world was hit by the red fire cannon like this, he would be more disappointed. "Actually, I didn't just want to attack you, Mr. Kakashi, I just wanted to show you what I carefully prepared," Naruto said with a confident smile on his lips. Kakashi was a little confused about Naruto's situation for a while, and suddenly he found that his body seemed to be stained with something like a spider web, and the spider web was still turning red rapidly from a distance and the energy was still spreading towards him. What? That spider web-like thing is the 12 fires of Hado that Naruto arranged in advance. It generates Ryutsu into a huge Kido web to capture the movements of surrounding enemies. It is also used as a conductor for Kido, making other Kido more accurate, to hit the enemy. With Naruto as the center, this large net covered a radius of 20 meters. The red fire cannon that Naruto had just released was detonated. The sound of explosions came one after another and Naruto's surroundings were instantly engulfed in a sea of fire. Chapter 9: The Oriole is Behind. 9/313. Chapter 9: The Oriole is Behind. If Kakashi was able to survive the initial red fire cannon, then there was no way that he would be unscathed by the subsequent explosions pulled by the ambush fire precisely. But in fact Naruto does not use all his strength because the fire cover covers a large area, so the damage is diluted to a